Hey, I want to start today with a question that I think a lot of you at some point have asked yourself. You probably haven't said it out loud. And the question is, what if it's not just you? We always have this assumption when it comes to weight that it's about us, our character, or our choices. Um, but I can assure you that there are people who are doing the right things and still not losing weight. And that is the most frustrating thing in the world. And it's all the more frustrating because people assume that they're not doing the right thing. People assume that it's always a matter of character and choice. And listen, let's be real. Sometimes it is. Not character, I wouldn't say so much. I mean, that's just judgmental nonsense. But sometimes it's certainly a matter of making the wrong choices over a long period of time. But there are people who are exercising, who are eating right, who are quote unquote doing everything right, everything they're supposed to do. And it's still a struggle for them to lose weight. And maybe you've had the idea that it's something in the environment. If the weight that you've put on that you can't take off is as a result of something in your environment that's actively working against your body's ability to manage weight, then you need to know about this. And it's not a cop out. This is science we're talking about. And it has a name. And today I want to talk about it. I want to talk about something called hormone disruptors. We've discussed this before, but it certainly bears repeating. And a specific subset of them called obesogens. Now, these are chemicals that interfere with your body's hormone system in ways that will encourage fat storage, interfere with your metabolism, and mess with your brain actually knowing when it's hungry and when it's satiated. And all of these chemicals are in your house right now. And it's not a conspiracy theory. I don't like conspiracy theories. I'm a debunker. This is peer-reviewed research, and it's been building up for decades. And we can't ignore it. It's a thing. And I've mentioned before, I've talked about what they call MAHA, Making America Healthy Again, and I've talked about RFK Jr., and he's been pointing at these chemicals in the food supply and in our environment. And there is plenty of science to back this up. And I hope ultimately he can do something about it. So let's get into it a little bit. Let's give a little context here about what hormone disruptors actually are, because your body runs on hormones. They are chemical messengers. They are produced in one area and they travel through your bloodstream and they tell your organs, your tissues, all your cells what to do, when to store fat, when to burn fat, when you're hungry, when you're full, how fast your metabolism runs. They control sleep. They control mood, your thyroid, how it functions. All of it is hormonal communication. This is a communication system. And it has to work like a communication system. Now, a hormone, aka an endocrine disruptor, is a chemical that interferes with that communication. And it does it in a few different ways. Some of these chemicals will actually mimic natural hormones, right? It's the way they're shaped. They're shaped similarly enough that they fit into the same slot, what we call receptors, the same keyhole that your hormones use. Your cells think that they're getting a real hormonal signal when they're not. They're getting an imposter. Now, some other disruptors block your hormones. They sit inside the receptor and they don't do anything, but they're taking up the space. And now the real hormones can't get through. This is how nature works. It's like this weird war, right? This weird war of one-upmanship. There are hormones, but there are things in the environment that are trying to survive, and so they survive by mimicking hormones. It's weird shit, frankly. It shouldn't exist. Now, your cells, they can't really tell the difference in the presence of one of these imposters. So it can be blocked. Your body sends the signal, nothing is receiving it. Now, still others change how many hormone receptors your cells produce, or they affect how your genes express themselves in ways that can alter your metabolism. So imagine for a minute tapping into your body's communication system and sending fake messages. Your cells end up responding to signals that were never supposed to be there. And it's one thing that these things exist, right? These chemicals that function as hormone disruptors. But the problem is these chemicals are everywhere in our modern society. They're in food packaging. They're in cookware. They're in personal care products. They're in tap water. They're in the receipts that you get at the grocery store. They make the glossiness on the receipts. And most people have no idea. But there are a specific subset of these hormone disruptors also, and they are called obesogens. And this word was coined by a researcher years ago at Cal Irvine. I actually have a cousin who was a professor there at Cal Irvine. And around 2006, he was studying a chemical called tributylin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a compound that's used in boat paint and antifungal products. And he discovered that it was programming fat cells to multiply and expand even when calorie intake was the same. And that was his light bulb moment. That was his eureka moment, because these chemicals don't just disrupt hormones in a general way. They specifically interfere with what we call the pathways that regulate fat storage and metabolism and appetite. And they make your body want to gain weight regardless of what you're eating. Now think about it. Think about the word itself, right? Let's break it down. Sometimes I have this conversation with clients. They've never heard of this. So I say, are you aware of obesogens, these chemicals? They're all over. And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, so you've never heard of them, but let's go ahead and break that word down. What does it mean? Well, everyone knows what obese means. And then the word gens, right? Coming from Genesis or genes or genetic. It means creation. These are the literal chemicals that create obesity, or at least tend towards creating obesity. It's wild stuff. Now, here's how these obesogens work in plain language. There are three main mechanisms. First, they will increase the number and the size of your fat cells. Your body generally has a certain number of fat cells, and they can grow or they can shrink. But obesogens can actually trigger the creation of new fat cells, and they can cause existing ones to expand. More fat cells mean that you have the capacity to store more fat, even on the same caloric intake. So the last thing you want is more fat cells. You need that like you need a hole in the head. Second, they slow your metabolism. Some obesogens will actually interfere with thyroid function directly. And the thyroid is the primary regulator of metabolism. Forgive me. And when it's being disrupted by chemical interference, your body is burning fewer calories at rest, right? Your basal metabolic rate, the baseline, drops. So you can be eating exactly what you were supposed to eat or what you were eating before, but because that baseline is dropped, you're going to gain weight. Third is they disrupt hunger and fullness signals. Now, I've talked about some of these hormones before. We have hormones called leptin and ghrelin, and they sound like medieval monsters, and they function that way if they're not working right. Okay, because your body's ability to sense hunger and fullness is a hormonal process. Leptin tells your brain that you're full. Ghrelin tells your brain that you're hungry. Obesogens interfere with both of these, so your fullness signal gets blocked and your hunger signal gets amplified. Now, this is important. The last thing you ever want to do is to pit your willpower against your body's chemistry. This is where a lot of people go wrong. This is a failure point. They never address and try to improve their body's chemistry. So the wrong signals keep happening. And willpower is necessary. We need it. But we should need it short term. If we're still fighting the same fight in a year, then the chances of us winning are very small, right? Fighting your own chemistry is so difficult to do. Willpower is a limited resource. You really can't, in the long term, willpower your way past a hormonal system that has been chemically reprogrammed to store fat and to stay hungry. You're working at cross purposes. You don't want to do that. Now, let me walk you through the most well-documented obesogens and where you're actually encountering them, because I want to be specific. Vagueness doesn't work. Let's get specific, okay? First, we have something called BPA, or bisphenol A. And that's one that many people have heard of because it's on plastics. It's on plastic bottles, and it's in the lining of canned goods. And this is one of those that mimics estrogen and also is shown to promote fat cell development, and it disrupts signaling of insulin, right? It's pretty ugly. And the reason why people know about it is because years ago, people started noticing that this chemical was on there in the plastics, for example, when they were drinking water. And they said, what the hell is going on here? And that's why if you look on most plastic bottles of water, it should be all, but you'll see BPA free. All right. You want to get away from plastics that have BPA in them. And the safest move is just to get away from plastics in food entirely. They should have no contact. Not just the BPA-free labeled ones. I mean, those are the most obvious ones, but ideally you just get rid of all of them. I mentioned before that the receipts at the grocery store are printed on thermal paper that are coated with BPA. So you hold one just for a few seconds and it absorbs through your skin. I hate when I get handed a receipt. I always tell them no receipts. Sometimes they try to almost force me to take it. They're thrusting it at me. I refuse to take these things. And what's even worse, once you know about it, right? If you don't know about it, it sounds like a fanatical thing. But once you know about it, when they put these receipts inside a bag where you have food, I don't want that shit on my food. So we have to be really careful about that. And even if you use like a hand sanitizer, a lot of people use hand sanitizers when they're at the supermarket, right? And if you do that before handling receipts, it increases absorption significantly. So decline the paper receipt whenever you can, all right? Then we have something called phthalates. Now, these are a family of chemicals. They're used to make plastic flexible. That's their function. They carry fragrances in personal care products. So they're in your shampoos, your lotions, your soap, your laundry detergent, your air fresheners. They're in vinyl flooring. And the word fragrance on a product label is sort of a legal loophole that can contain dozens of undisclosed chemicals. And many of these chemicals are phthalates. So if a product just says fragrance and it's not a perfume, then it's likely to be one of these chemicals. You're better off with the fragrance-free version most of the time. And by the way, people hate this. People hate this idea because when someone does a program, one of my programs, and I tell them, well, you may have to change your personal care products, they're like, what? What kind of wackiness is that? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It makes complete sense once you understand this. This stuff is in personal care products that people are slathering on their body. Do you know how many self-care products people use? I mean, and especially people who are into this, right? Like, I don't even understand. There's a moisturizer for the hand, moisturizer for the face, for the body. Why do you need different ones? Apparently you do, for people who do this a lot. I resent every second I take on self-care, so I don't do it a lot. You know, I'm good with soap in a shower. All right, let's move on. Okay. Then we have something else called PFAS. All right. Now, these can be considered forever chemicals because they don't break down in the environment or in your body. And they're in nonstick cookware, the lining of microwaves and microwave popcorn bags and stain-resistant furniture and carpets and many, many things. And they accumulate over time. You see, this is the problem. This is why RFK Jr., who you can question his sanity, fine, but he's right on this particular point. He yells about this stuff. So it's not like BPA because the phthalates, they have short half-lives. They clear relatively quickly. But the PFAS build up in the tissues over years of exposure. And then we add to that something called atrazine. It's one of the most widely used herbicides in the United States, herbicides, sorry, sprayed primarily on corn crops. It runs off into our water supply. It's been detected in tap water across the Midwest and other agricultural regions. It disrupts hormone function. It's been shown to promote fat storage and insulin resistance. So this is part of why a water filter should not be optional. It's a very meaningful health intervention in today's day and age. Okay, now let's talk about the good news, right? Because our bodies are made pretty smart. We're all still alive. If you're listening to me, I assume you're still alive. And the reason is because our bodies are smart. For most of these chemicals, the BPAs, the phthalates, once you reduce exposure, your body clears them within days. Not years, days. So we have very efficient system. They're not heavy metals that accumulate in your tissue for decades. We're designed to process and eliminate chemicals. The problem is that it can't keep up when the exposure is constant. And we're under a constant assault. And this means that everything that we do that goes in the right direction is going to decrease our chemical burden. Because your body responds quickly when you reduce the load. So that's what you should be thinking about, reducing the load, not making yourself nuts because you easily can. And this is one of the things that stops people, right? I don't want to start fixing things because where does it end? Everything kills you, right? This is what the cynic says. Well, everything kills you. You can't get away from it. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. All right? The goal is not perfection. These chemicals are ubiquitous. We can't eliminate all exposure, not in this society. The goal is meaningful reduction. Target the highest exposure sources first. Make swaps when they matter. Okay? Swap out certain products for other products and let your body do the rest. Okay? Now, what to actually do? What are some swaps that you can make? Well, here are the changes that are going to give you the most reduction for the least effort. First, get out of plastic for food and drink. Switch food storage containers to glass, stainless steel, silicone. That's good. Don't heat food in plastics, even BPA-free plastics. Heat accelerates the chemical leaching dramatically. All right, so it's gonna, if you heat something up and there's plastic there, the plastic's gonna leach into it. So let's remove that as an exposure source. Okay, replace nonstick cookware. Teflon coated pans are sources of the PFAS. Switch to cast iron, stainless steel, ceramic. Ceramic is, or it can be, nonstick. So use ceramic for nonstick. Okay, it's usually not expensive. All right, filter your water. Now, for a lot of people, you're using, water that's already been filtered, but a lot of time it's in plastic containers. But, put filters on the faucets at home. This is a very high impact change. We drink with water, we cook with it, we shower in it. So that's very important. Now, go fragrance free when you can. You'd be surprised that scented cleaning products, laundry detergents, personal care products, you'd be surprised how much of this stuff they have in it. And obviously, if you're slathering it onto your skin is going to absorb it. It's going to get inside of you. Choose organic, especially for what they call the dirty dozen. Now, what is the dirty dozen? Well, there's something called the Environmental Working Group, and it publishes an annual list of the produce with the highest residue of pesticides. And that's what they term the dirty dozen. Strawberries, spinach, peppers, apples, grapes typically lead the list. So try to go organic on those specific items, even if you're buying conventional for other things. That's the most cost-effective approach. All right. And lastly, decline paper receipts. You don't need them. This is a small change. They're obnoxious anyway. What the hell do people do with them when you're getting a digital statement every month anyway? Okay, you can always look at the records. We don't need this. Thermal receipt paper, again, is a concentrated source of BPA, and most people have no idea. All right, so the conversation around health and weight loss has been dominated for decades now by calories in and calories out. And that's not completely wrong, but it's massively incomplete. Your body is a hormone signaling system, right? It's this communication system that's operating inside this chemical environment. And if the environment is full of these chemical compounds that mimic your hormones, that block them, that slow your metabolism, that multiply your fat cells, confuse your hunger signals, don't let you know when you're full. I mean, willpower and meal planning can only do so much. But the good news is, like I said, we have more control than we think. We sometimes disempower ourselves and we act like we don't, but we do. You can make swaps. You can reduce the load, and your body, given the chance, will rehabilitate itself. So start with something this week: a water filter, glass containers, something. All right, fragrance-free soap. Remove the obstacles. Give your body the conditions where it will work best, and the rest will get easier. All right. So that's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. I will speak to you again next week, and have a great day.